Black like me. Black like me. Black like me.
You're listening to Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G., a podcast that invites you to experience the world through the perspective of one black man, one conversation, one story, or even one rant at a time. Here's Dr. G.
Hey, good people. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Black Like Me with Dr. Alex G. And can you believe it? We are deep into season 9 where our theme is that black enough for you? And so I'm really excited about this season. We're at a special moment in our time where the media outlets in this community are commemorating something that I wrote 10 years ago, a front page essay that was called Justified Anger. And so I'm having friends, colleagues talk to me about where they were when this dropped or thoughts that they have. But today I have the distinct opportunity to bring someone in who really was part of inspiring segments of this essay, but also sat with me as I began to shape what's become the Justified Anger movement. And so in my studios today, I have Mr. Kaleem Caire, who is the CEO and the founder of One City Schools here in Madison, Wisconsin, brilliant educator, thought leader who's been talking to us about the needs for our children educationally, culturally, socially, economically for decades. Now, I've known him since he was an infant and have watched him grow up to become a vet, to become a dad, a family man, an employee, an employer, and all of these things. And so, Mr. Caire, I want to welcome you back to Black Like Me podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Happy to be here.
Man, you're looking fit. You're looking about 10 years younger.
That's what everybody's telling me.
No, I'm serious, man. I'm serious because you're looking good, brother. So I'm really appreciating that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, about a year and a half ago, Hetty Road, who does a lot of photos in Madison, took a photo of me for a national effort I was involved in, and I had to send this. And when she sent me the proofs, I was like, you took this pic? Like, that's not me. And everybody was like, well, that's you. It looks like you. And I said, this looks terrible. And Hetty was like, this doesn't look that bad to me. You look good. And I said, that's because y'all have gotten too used to seeing me like this.
Wow.
I was almost 280 pounds.
Wow, man. Well, listen.
And that's where I keep fluctuating around 260 to 286. And then I said, forget that. I'm done with that. So I just started working out, man. And now I'm 228.
Come on now. You look good. It looks good on you, man. You look like you did as a young man. Well, listen. Look at here, Mr. Caire. So before we jump into the conversation about Justified Anger, I love going through my black icebreakers. So I got a couple of them for you that I'd love just to invite and just to ask for your indulgence. Okay. Grits or cream of wheat, young man?
Ooh.
Wait, you got to pause?
I got to go with grits. Well, it's hard. It depends on what time of day. Grits I'll eat from 11 a.m. all the way through the evening. And then cream of wheat in the morning, man. I gotta.
You eat cream of wheat in the morning.
Gotta have it in the morning. Little salt, little creamy, little brown sugar, and some butter.
What do you put in your grits? Are you a savory guy? Do you put butter and salt in your grits,
I
or
put
butter
sugar
and
salt?
No sugar in your grits.
No sugar in my grits.
But in your cream of wheat.
But in my cream of wheat, gotta have it.
Got you. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let me see. Let me ask you a couple other questions. When you were young, did an older relative ever put a telephone or a cable bill in your name?
You know it.
You don't have to divulge who.
Auntie, I won't say who.
What bill was it? Was it cable?
I think it was a cable bill. Yep, I'm pretty sure it was a cable bill.
And so what possessed black mothers, aunts, grandmamas, uncles, and them to put stuff in our name because they messed their names up and they
I think it's because they love their children so much.
Good answer. Keep coming.
That they knew they would pay that bill because they don't want to mess our credit up forever.
Uh-huh.
But there's also a problem with their credit might have been a little messed up to start with.
Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, I got it. That was a good answer. What day of the week did Soul Train come on TV?
Oh, that is a good question. I believe it was Saturday.
It was Saturday. You got that one.
We had to see that.
All right, let me see. Listen, when you were sick and younger, did you have a relative that would like either rub your nostrils or make you put Vicks Vapor Rub in your mouth?
Vicks Vapor Rub. My grandmother was on my chest.
Oh my god!
And right under my nose.
Right under.
Yeah. And then you had to cover up too.
Definitely. And put that vaporizer.
Yeah. And sometimes
on.
they put it on your back. Yeah.
Because black people did not listen. My wife just was getting over a sinus infection, and she has all this Nasonex and stuff you can only take once a day. I bought her some good old fashioned Vicks Vapor Rub. She said, "Alex, this outdoes all
everything."
That stuff. She was, I know it says not for internal use.
That's right.
She said, I swabbed the inside of my left nostril, and then I took my finger and I put it inside the other side.
That's right.
Listen to this, Alex.
That's right.
I can smell. And so there's something about this. Listen, you can't mess with grandmama's recipes. What does it mean when someone takes food and they say it's so good and makes you want to slap your mama? Is that a compliment or is that an insult?
Oh, that's a compliment. That's a compliment. Oh man, that means that it is so good you gotta lick your fingers.
Oh man. Do you know what a washcloth is?
Yes, I do.
What is a washcloth?
Boy, get it all up in there. Make sure you got that Castile soap on it. Get it all up in there.
Soap. I remember that. What color was the wrapper in the Castile soap?
White? It was white with the red and the blue.
Yeah, with the oh man.
It was like paper.
We always joke about this. We get this kind of feedback because a lot of us grew up in the South Side of Madison. Let's see. I went. At Leopold, they made you start doing showers like in 4th grade. Sort of optional in middle school. But like when a lot of us, use sports, it was funny because black people would bring like washcloths. And our white friends was like, what? Like, here's the bar of soap. But like, that soap is not supposed to touch your body.
That's right. It's the washcloth. That's right.
The washcloth. Like that's nasty. You're not about to hand me that bar of soap.
To this day, I use a washcloth or one of those nice sponges.
I do too.
Yeah. Otherwise, I don't just put soap on my body.
I'm telling you. Do you remember White Shadow?
That's not washing up.
That's not washing up. No, that's rinsing off.
That's rinsing off.
That's rinse. Old folks used to call that a whole bath.
That's right.
Jeremy, do not edit that out. That's a whole bath. Do you remember White Shadow?
I remember. I love White Shadow.
I brought it up.
That coach was great.
That coach was great. Okay, yeah. But remember, the guys always have these scenes like in the shower and stuff. But the black guys had the
you had the one white dude.
The one white dude had all the people with the washcloth. Let me see if I got anything else. Have you ever, Mr. Caire, been referred to as articulate?
Oh man, yes. When I'm speaking their language, not my own.
Come on now, their language.
He is so articulate.
Yes, he is. He is. Let me see. Let me see. Now, some of these things I find in my black icebreakers, like I collect these and I hear them. Some of them, I realize that they're time sensitive, so it might be more of my generation than yours. But do you remember when black people would say, and can you finish this sentence? I ain't got to do nothing but stay
black.
And what else? Because I ain't got to do it but stay black and...
Oh, now you got me.
Black and die.
Black and die. That's right. That's right. That's right.
Like, you got to do this. I ain't got to do nothing but stay black and die.
That's right.
Oh, man. Now, I haven't asked this one in a long time, but I think you might be too young for this one. But do you remember when black people, namely black women, and a lot of times when they were pregnant, would eat Argo starch?
Yes, I do.
Do you really?
Yes, I do.
So Argo starch is you put that in water, dissolve it in water.
Dissolve it in water.
So that you can starch your shirt.
Have warm water.
But do you remember like when black people put it like in their hands, like it's sunflower seeds or something? Yeah. It's like chalk.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, all right, man. We must be closer in age. Okay, one other thing I want to say. What does it mean when our white buddies say frickin' A? What does frickin' A mean?
Well,
have you ever heard somebody say it?
Yeah,
and I don't mean literally, but like I guess you could. Well,
black folks say, "Man, fuck that shit." Freaking A, what you talking about? Fuck
freaking A, that's the clean. So, Jeremy, I've been asking this for years. So when a white person says frickin' A, what they're really saying is fuck that shit.
That's right.
You never told me that, Jeremy.
Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. That's a great note to end on. That's probably one of the funniest black icebreaker sessions I have had, Mr. Caire. Thank you.
You got it,
man. Thank you for that. Listen, you all. Mr. Caire spent a lot of time at his grandmother's house. His family's been historic. In this community, his grandmother, Mrs. Mary Caire, was one of the founders of, I think, Urban League. NAACP, you named the organization,
Association,
all of those kinds of things that she was really a part of. And I was fortunate enough to have her as a neighbor. When the church that I now pastor started in my parents' living room almost 50 years ago, she actually would come and sit in on some of those living room services when I was a teenager, just sort of getting a sense about wanting to do ministry, wanting to preach. And so you went away for college and military, but came back here to work and all. But we have so many good and joint experiences here in South Madison. But I'm so excited to imagine that the community has thought of Justified Anger as a thing that Cap Times would reprint it, like they would put it back out electronically, but that they would allow me to write another front page essay. And so I'm asking people who were around back then, do you remember where you were when Justified Anger dropped? And I don't mean like exactly, but like what life was like and what you're focusing on, because you and I had breakfast the morning at Perkins, the morning it dropped. I went and picked it up, but I didn't read it because I was too scared to read it. And we just happened to be having breakfast that day.
That's right.
I brought it to you and you were looking at it. I asked you the question, now I'm answering it. And I remember you just kept looking up with your eyes like bucked wide open, like,
this brother said that.
Bro, you said that. You read somewhere you said, bro, you said, and then I'm getting scared and sweating. So tell me about what you were thinking in a general sense as we sat there in breakfast and I bring this article that you hadn't seen and said, Kaleem, it just dropped. This is the front page story. Look what they let me write.
I tell you, because I was still at the Urban League, it was my last year.
Yes.
That's when I had put on all that weight. I was stressed out. I gained 70 pounds after I came back to Madison in 2010. And, I was struggling with being few voices that were just dropping the mic.
Yes.
And, I was way out there with the school, with everything, and, looking for partners and allies. And, you've always been a vocal person, nonprofit leader when it wasn't a thing for people yet. But I heard you talk like that. I hadn't seen you write like that. So
even though you know me a long time.
My first thing was, bro, look, I just gained 70 pounds by doing this. And you just dropped the mic. That's why I was looking up like, oh, he's going to catch some hell from this. This brother's going to need he's going to need an ally. But also it felt good because it was a moment where it was like, we've got to say what we feel. We got to say what we think. Otherwise, we're not going to get where we need to go if we're not honest with people.
Right. During the icebreaker question, one of them was, have you ever been called articulate? And so in certain formats, you and I have been invited to speak, I'm sure Optimus, Kiwanis, Rotary, and we can wax eloquent. It's part of what we do. But when we use that same eloquence to speak up for the good of our community, we're seen as divisive or angry.
Yes.
And it becomes very off-putting to people. And I think to your point, back in those days, we could talk about diversity. There was no such thing as DEI. We didn't use that kind of language.
That's right.
But we could talk about those issues to make white people feel comfortable. But you push the envelope. You would say things about our kids and how they're being failed, how they're failing in our educational system, in a system that boasts itself as being one of the best in the nation. So you said some uncomfortable things. There was thought that somebody else needed to come out there.
That's right.
With you, that somebody else needed to speak up and not just say things are fine for fear you're going to lose funding. And so I feel that my first love is, my passion is really public speaking. I probably, when I was still afraid or nervous to speak publicly, not because of content, I just was nervous speaking in front of people. I think writing was my way out. I'm less guarded when I write. I don't know if that's how you are, because you do a lot of public speaking, which you're very good, but you're also an excellent writer. I'm less guarded because I'm not reading people's body language. When I'm speaking, I can tell when people are falling asleep. That's probably from church. When people are looking at their watch, when they're not engaged. When writing, I'm not tuned into that because that person's not in front of me. So I felt that there was a level of my voice that came out in that article because I was not looking at the audience. I was really looking in my own heart saying, I need to put out what life is really like in a community for Black people in a place where people think, no, this is just good for everybody. So that's part of what you were reading.
And I tell people, like, man, when you had that big event at the Lion Energy Center and all of us showed up behind you, we were there in case you took a bullet.
No, you never told me that.
I mean, no, but like, seriously, it wasn't like literally. But it's like, man, this brother just went way out there. Wow. And it was a moment I was watching a moment for our leaders in our community. Where are you going to be?
We got to put that picture up.
Are you going to be there behind him, with him? Wow, or are you going to sit there in the audience and you'll show up, but are you going to see, looking around, wondering, man, what's going to happen to
Kaleem,
this brother? Because you know
wow.
that's what happens to us.
That-
and so to see
yes.
all those brothers and sisters stand up behind you, what it also did for me was it was like, okay, at the Urban League, like, see, we do feel this way.
Right.
These
Wow.
are real issues. This is something that not just one black person, because they try to assign it to you.
Exactly.
That no, this is something that the whole community is feeling. And so I tell people, like, between that and that race to equity report that Doug Nelson and Erica and them did, which
Right.
gave data.
Right.
You gave the soul to it, like the spirit to it, and they gave the data.
Wow.
And it was like, man, it was powerful. And without those two things,
Yes.
we wouldn't be where we are right now.
Wow. Tell me more about that.
You know, one person, like I was told by Dr. Perry Henderson and his wife, he used to call me the tip of the spear. And he said, you know, when I was at the Urban League, at the 100 Black Men, I was the youngest member there, those 7 founding members.
Right.
And I was vocal. I didn't have much tact with my voice. And he was like, this boy is fearless. Like, you know, he's always going to be the first one in. And he reminded me of this at the Urban League. Because I was having some, you know, when I was going through those struggles with the school and stuff, he said, you just got to accept the fact, I was at their house, that you're the tip of the spear. He said, I think you're okay with it. He said, you're going to be the first one that goes in. He said, but the problem with the spear is that the spear gets lost in the body. And as a doctor, the only way you can get that spear is pull it out the back. Damn. So he said, the people that follow you are those feathers. He said, you know, there've got to be people that follow, that build on that. Otherwise, the movement gets lost. And so he said, and you said something to me too about a prophet isn't without honor except for in their own home.
Right.
It was like Mark chapter 6, verse something.
Right.
You sent it to me. When I first got back home, it's like a welcome back, but here's what you should expect when you come back home.
Yes.
Your voice will be valued, but only so much as other people speak to it. So when you spoke up, it was in writing, people get a chance to read it and reflect. They're not just listening.
Right.
And then all of a sudden it became a topic of conversation. And then these brothers and sisters didn't leave you out there alone. Everybody was talking about it.
Y'all came with me.
Everybody came with you. And then when that data came out, it was around the same time, 2013.
Mm-hmm.
It was like it added like, okay, and this came from them, right? Not from us. But it said something that we've been saying for years. Urban League had done the State of Black Madison.
2008, I think.
But people weren't listening to that.
Not at all.
So when he came out with that Erica and the Race to Equity report, it was like a triangle.
Yes.
And it added power to it. And so then other people started stepping up. It gave everybody else an opportunity to exercise their voice because they saw, number one, you can exercise your voice and get support. Number two, people aren't going to just clip you. There'll be people who always complain, but you can survive. But you got to stay consistent. You got to keep moving. And that's another thing that you did, was you just didn't have the event. You kept it moving. And those classes that you guys host, I tell people.
Black History for
how many
New Day.
people? 3, 4, 5,000?
5,000 people now.
I've heard about that from so many people who've gone through it, where I'm sitting here, when I was at the Urban League talking to some of the same people before they went through that course, and it was like talking to a blank wall. And all of a sudden I'm talking to them, and not only are they absorbing what I'm telling them, they're like, yeah, you know, I read this book, or I thought about this. It was Jack Salzweedel when he was still president of AmFam. He was introducing me to his successor. And me and Will Green had gotten this award. It was like right before the pandemic hit that February. And he was like, he's telling me about he was planning to retire, all that. He said, you know, I'm thinking maybe I'll go back and be a teacher or whatever. But he asked me if I had read a couple of books. I can't remember what they were, but I was like, this brother's reading that? I said, where'd you start the discovery moment? And he said, well, you know, we've been working with Dr. G and getting people into these courses. And
wow,
I'm sitting here like, okay. So it enlightened people. And so what it is, you got to educate people. And whatever you've done to create a forum, I'm happy to, like, I know I'm talking on January with it this year. Your niece reached out to me. But it's powerful, brother. And so keeping those things going are critical.
Definitely. The other side of that, training the white allies, is that we're also we're doing the next steps, but then we're also doing something with our emerging Black leaders. And you've spoken to that group of mine before too.
Yeah.
You know, it's interesting. People think that sometimes you can just push a button and have Black leaders emerge. And but like the point you made, that you all showed up in mass. Like if a bomb or something had dropped on that space at the Alliance Center, we would have lost 90%,
90%.
9% of our black
That's right. Leadership.
civic leaders in the community. Pastors were there, other folks. And I still look at that picture. You, Dawn Krim, Jack,
Daniels, everybody.
All of these
Ruben,
folks, and you all,
everybody was
I mean, if those of you not from Wisconsin, these are heavy hitters. Dr. Gloria Latson Billings.
Yep.
People stood there and people had a chance to see this united front. And not that I want to belabor this, but white innovators don't have to get 25 white people on stage behind them to be validated.
That's right.
And then even when we did this, even when we did it, Kaleem, I remember someone saying, but so-and-so wasn't there.
Correct.
It didn't matter that Dr. Jack Daniels, Dr. Alex G, Dr. Gloria Latson Billings, Brandy was there, you were there, Laleda was there, Annette was there, Greg Banks. Like, I'm thinking about all of these people that were up there on that stage, but someone was still pointing out the one black person they could think about that wasn't on the stage. Right. And could this fully be valid?
Right. Just a way to discredit it.
Right. It's just a way to discredit it.
That's right.
But you can be white and innovative. Just think about our friend Scott Resnick.
Right.
So Scott's a former city alder, ran for mayor, is an entrepreneur, very adept entrepreneur. But when Scott got a good idea, Scott did not have to have 30 white people stand on the stage behind him to validate it. People didn't say, well, where's Mayor Soglin? Where's Joe Sweeney? He just got to be brilliant Scott.
That's right.
And to do the stuff that he did.
That's right.
We got to bring other people along. Otherwise, they're wondering, are you competitive? And this is just reality, folks. We're not trying to complain. We are still skilled men who are black who are doing great things in this community, have raised great children. But the truth of the matter is, we are leaders who happen to be black. But the rules of engagement for black leaders, for leaders who are black, is quite different because you've got to be able to know your data, do your homework. Kaleem, we had 750 seats in that auditorium. We had at least 100 people standing or sitting on the floor.
There was about 1,000 people.
There was about 1,000 people there.
Yeah.
When we did the town hall meeting in February of 2014 here at the church, there were 600. Noble Ray, who's our former police chief, said there's never been a civilian-led town hall meeting with numbers that large.
That's right.
He said when it was done, when it's happened, it's been called by a politician or maybe a police chief or something. He said it's the first time it's happened. We double those numbers at the expo center and have to still get black people up on stage, which means no white influencer.
That's right.
Even those running, like I've even gone to mayoral debates or discussions. It's 100 people in there maybe.
Yeah.
Even when we're doing all of that, we have to still validate our ideas and our existence and our position by having a bunch of us stand on the stage. But y'all were brilliant to stand behind me because it did send the optic. In order to take that Negro down, we got to do something to all of them, and it really did give me a sense of defense.
And I'll tell you, the other thing that was so powerful about that, because we stand on the shoulders of all the generations that came before us. So like having Dr. Perry Henderson in Virginia support, having, Betty Franklin Hammonds, or when she was still alive, and Betty Banks, who's still with us.
Exactly. Miss Malele
and Richard Harris and all these folks. They were in the audience, brother, or they were on that stage.
You're right,
That
man.
was powerful.
You're right.
And so to have that generation there validating too was huge. And those who don't know those folks wouldn't understand that. But I sat there and looked out there and I'm like, we got to keep moving.
Wow.
Because that's it. They came there because they wanted to see this thing keep moving.
Right.
Kaleem,
years ago, I was in strange space because I've always wanted to get back to this community because of what it provided for my mother. Those who follow this podcast just know my mom came here as a single mother on vacation, fell in love with the campus, and although she only had about a ninth grade education, didn't complete ninth grade. Took the entrance exam, got into Wisconsin, fast forward, got her undergrad and master's degree, invited her brothers and sisters' children to come. And so now we have 13 degrees in my family from UW Madison. I have another cousin that's about to graduate in about a year. But I found that when I, as an innovator, got new ideas, people would say to me, well, what does Kaleem think about that?
Right.
So before you came back to Madison, the question was, what does Mount Zion think? What does Denali and Bell think?
Right.
They would always bring that up. So I started playing hooky, and I started in moonlighting. So I started doing consulting work and speaking in California, New York, and doing stuff. And when you were in town, Jabari and Sekani were young kids, like maybe 6 and 3 or 4. I remember you bringing them to the office. They'd be playing on the floor while we talked and caught up. And you said, so, man, when are you going to build that church? When are you going to do this expansion? I said, man, I'm tired of this community. You said,
remember
I
that.
need you to build this because I need my kids to see Black innovation. So a couple of weeks ago, when our Center for Black Excellence in Culture, we haven't built our facility yet, but we were doing pre-events. And I saw both of your daughters.
That's right.
Staffing a table, for Amira's art. Is it Alana or Elena?
Alana. Yeah.
Now, Alana's an artist too, right?
She is. And she's a poet too.
And so I'm not sure if Alana's art was on the table, but I certainly know Amira's was.
It was Amira's art.
It was Amira's art. And I told them this story before you came back. I said, you all, I'm building this $36 million facility that's 37,000 square feet. But you all know that your dad came to my office when I was running away from home. That's why I said playing hooky. That's what I meant, running away from home, and said, you got to build this because my kids need to see it. And then his 2 adult daughters are sitting here under the umbrella of what I created.
Powerful.
Dude, I get chills thinking about.
I saw Greg Dobie's daughter in there.
Yes.
Yeah, man. Seeing Anique's daughter singing, she did
She did a fantastic job. And so we're seeing these Black artists.
You had 3 or 4 generations in there.
Do you
man.
imagine what life would have been like for us? I think Anique's daughter's 14, 15, maybe 17. If we saw Black people singing at 17 at an event like that, a Black artist. And so I just say that to underscore the fact that in leadership, we don't do this as a vacuum. And we don't allow people to pit us against each other, separate us from each other.
That's right.
That it was important for me to tell your daughters who are benefiting from my work, my creativity, that's it. But your dad was the inspiration. And Alana wasn't even born.
That's right.
And I'm not even sure if Amira was. I'm not sure how much younger than she is than.
She wasn't. It was my 2 boys.
It was just the 2 boys, exactly. Right. So for them to be sitting in this space, maybe even thinking like this was always in the works, but not understanding that you had a role before you moved back. And then when you moved back, you said, hey, man, I'm out here, like in these meetings with the Community Foundation and other places. And they're saying, where's Alex? He's like, man, where you? Like you just said, man, where you been?
Your brother went MIA.
like, dude, you MIA. And I told you, Kaleem, I'm out here in New York. I'm doing stuff. I'm tired of doing these kinds of things where people are asking me, questioning my innovation and stuff. I'm writing books. I'm getting out here. I'm living outside of Madison. You said, man, the community needs you. So I just want to say for the record that you inspired me to think about building when I really thought that moment passed. And you also encouraged me to become re-engaged in the community because I was really done with,
But you went through a lot of hardship too. Yeah, people can't keep getting beat down like that.
Right, and that's how we lose good talent. And, Jackie, my wife, loves Madison. So it wasn't like we were trying to move, but I was being asked. And it wasn't just like to take jobs.
I remember that. They were looking at New York trying to get you all of that. I remember that.
Seattle was trying to get me places I would love to live. And so I just want to make sure that I say for the record that, one, I don't forget those things. And that no matter what you do and what you build, you have to remember that people have inspired you. So that reminds me to inspire people when I can because, so how old is Jabari now, if I may ask?
30.
Okay, so he was like 6 at the time.
So we're talking. He was 7. He was 8 years old. So Connie was 6. I'll never forget.
Yeah. And so we're talking about like almost 25 years ago that things are incubating. We're about to break ground on this facility, on a debt-free facility in about 7-8 months. It'll be open in 18 months after that, late 2025. But not only did you and the community stand behind me when I wrote Justified Anger a few minutes ago, a decade ago, but you and others are standing behind me.
That's right.
When I was sitting down, I'm just counting my time. I'm getting about this city, and I really appreciate that.
But I had Miss Pleasant Rowland and Jerry Fauci over yesterday, and
these are people that founded the American Girl, company,
and we gave $200 million to Overture. Jerry did. I mean, they are our biggest philanthropist in Madison in the last 30 years.
Yes.
There's other big ones, but they are the largest. And I thank them for investing in all of our projects. Because I told him, I said, the challenging part for me has been, I've also had to change my language up because I have been very critical about Madison putting all this money in buildings and not in children. And so I told him this conflict that I had that, that here we see people talk about East Washington Avenue, everything that's going up. And I'm like, that's great, but are we making any money off that? Number two, we're building bills, but are we building kids? And I said, but then fast forward, now we've got the cultural center, we've got the Central Spinal Building, we got the Urban Leagues Hub, we got all of those things, and we need those things.
We do.
I said, our kids need those things. They need to see that we can build this stuff right here and that they can be a part of it. And I told them how powerful their contributions have been, and so I hope others who listen to this know, like, we've got to complete these projects. We got to get them on the ground. We got to get them moving, and we got to keep them moving because that next generation is looking at that. And what we can't do too, Pastor, is we can't help make our kids think that this was easy.
That's
because
right.
How many years did it take you?
Decades.
You got to be persistent. You might have to start, but you can't stop the vision. And that's something that Pleasant told me. She said, resilient. You got to be resilient. She's been a businesswoman for years. You got these moments where you don't know, oh man, I don't know if I can keep going with this.
Right.
You got to keep pushing forward. And she appreciates that in people who keep the ball moving.
Wow.
And so our babies need to see that, this was built, but there was a lot of hard work that was put into this. And if you commit yourself to doing the hard work, you can keep building.
Yes. Now that we're in our 9th season, this award-winning podcast celebrates the fact that we have reached people throughout the U.S., all 50 states, and even over 80 countries around the world. It's my dedicated team of people who are committed to changing the conversation around race that has made this such a rich podcast. And so when you sign up to support Black Like Me podcast, you're not only supporting this work, but you're supporting this team of people that are helping us to create better quality content, more marketing strategies, a bigger and better production and marketing team, a better interactive experience, and more importantly, a better society. By clicking the link below, you can sign up for one of the many levels that we offer, beginning with just $2 a month. And by doing so, you join a growing community of people who are really committed to engaging the issue of race in such a raw and unprecedented manner with such unprecedented honesty. To become a patron, again, all you've got to do is click the link below and you can support these important conversations and the work that this podcast is doing. I want to thank you in advance. Man, when you hear a successful businesswoman who created the American Girl doll company,
that's right,
telling you about the importance to be resilient and persistent, you have to pause and listen to that. It would be too easy to say, "Well, it's easy. You a white woman. You have these resources." No, she said, with all that she had to be persistent and resilient. Right. We need to listen to that because we think stuff happens easily. Kaleem, you referenced a meeting that we had, a gathering at the Expo Center. But I think that there were a couple of smaller meetings that were turning points. Do you remember when we did the Black community listening session upstairs?
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, we just invited, and a couple of white interlopers came because we made it very clear it's for the Black community. But I don't think what you remember, part of this is retelling the story. We're capturing it, we're recording it so people will know. We sat in the meeting over there in I'm pointing you all to the old part of our building because just like the old civil rights movement, we used to meet in the basement of this church. I said I wanted to have a Black listening session. A lot of Black influencers said, no, you can't do that. That's going to be wrong. It's like reverse discrimination. When the word gets out that we're having a Black only.
I remember the conversation. I remember who was in the room.
I remember who was in the room too. But let me tell you, there were two people in that room who told me not only can you must. You and my sister Laleda. All those other folks, they never sat around the table with me again for this movement. That was the last time. And it wasn't because they were ousted. Though everyone but you and Laleda, everyone else made a conscientious decision to disassociate themselves. Now that was difficult because I got scared.
Yeah.
Because like what are we gonna do now? And again, this is where I think we always talk about what's wrong in our community, but we don't give examples of what works really well. Someone came to me and said, "Hey, G, word on the street is you can't pull this off." And so I know an accountant, they can come and help you pull this plan and stuff together. But I knew that if they did it, they would own it. And then that accounting firm would say, well, we have experience in organizing thought leaders in the black community. And they didn't deserve that, right? Because they hadn't done anything. And they were going to charge me $8,000.
That's right.
Like we all working for free.
And you got to end up going through them for everything.
Got to go through them for everything. Daryl Bazell, who was a vice chancellor for budget at University of Wisconsin-Madison. You know him, a great brother. He said, nope, we're not going to do that, G. We're not going to do that. I will facilitate. I said, well, what do I have to pay you? He said, why don't you just get me a bottle of water and a white erase board and a dry erase board. I said, well, are you serious? You were at that meeting. He facilitated.
That's right.
We were there. The people that was part of what was called at the time Justified Anger Coalition, but Brandy was there. Brongen was there.
Yeah, Steve Brongen.
His son.
Oh, that's right.
I can't believe I'm drawing a blank on his
gosh,
son.
man.
That's not Michael.
No. Just a powerful young brother.
Matthew Brongen.
Yeah.
Matthew Brongen. Others were there speaking into this process. Dr. Gloria Latson, but like these people came to talk with us on a Saturday. And then not only that, Daryl Bazell met with me every Thursday morning at 7 a.m. because it was in the winter. It was still dark when I would get to campus. He had a parking spot for me. We would sit down and he would coach me on stuff. So when we got that $1 million Wisconsin Partnership Program, I called him up and said, Daryl, we got this $1 million grant from the Wisconsin Partnership Program. He said, oh, yeah, that's the Blue Cross and Blue Shield money. I said, wait, you know about this fund? And he kind of told me the background. He said, gee, I could not be more proud of you to think about those days and meeting in my office. And you put this plan together and you're working to overturn the social determinants of health by creating places of inclusion, using your history class to help white people or non-black people become allies. But that's because he did not want me to take our brain trust to a white accounting firm where they then own it, manipulate it. We have to ask for permission. He knew that we had to keep black thought in control of black people.
Yes.
And so if we're going to be movers and shakers, I know I'm singing to the audience, to the choir by saying this to you, we have to have the boldness to see the issues, live them, survive them, and then articulate them.
That's right.
Then organize around them, then fundraise around them, and then plan while still bringing in, we had to have our non-black allies help us in this process, but still keeping black leadership at the core of it. But that process of where other black leaders, Dr. Rose sat down with me when some of the leaders got sideways with me, and I want to tell one of them to take their checks back. And I actually was just looking for the green light to do because although I needed that money, I wanted the satisfaction of telling someone who had talked ignorantly to me, take your money and shove it. Daryl was like, no, Rev, no, you can't say that. Let me handle it. And he went and took that funder to the woodshed, not in front of me. He went and met with them on their own, but took them to the woodshed. And so for me, I said, wait, all I got to do is lead. All I've got to do is be a thought leader. All I've got to do is keep moving and caring about the people and following the vision. But I've got people that will handle those distractions. What black leader can't thrive under those circumstances?
That's
so
right.
I felt the love of the black community.
And what we got to do is we've got to make sure that the generation that follows us and that follows them understands how that was done.
Yes.
And the important role of, being an ally and not seeing yourself as a follower, but being a partner.
A partner.
So many of our kids are like, I don't want to be a follower. I want to be the one out front. Not everybody can be out front,
Right.
or if you might be out front today, but you got to stand behind people tomorrow. And that's about being a partner. It's about being a good ally.
That's powerful, Mr. Caire.
And that's how you move forward. And you don't have to agree with everything everybody says either.
Right.
Or somebody might say something you don't like, and all of a sudden I'm out. You can't have thin skin.
Right.
Because if you're building a trusting relationship with people, like we do with our spouses and people like that, how many times do we get in disagreements?
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
You can't leave the table like that.
You're right.
You got to have a way to come back to the table
Right.
and keep moving. And that's the thing that I loved about seeing my grandparents and grandma, everybody, because they'd be arguing with each other, but they would close ranks in public.
Yes, they would.
They'd be in the house talking, or my grandmother would complain about somebody, and when they talk, I'd call them on the phone, and they're joining each other, and then you see them out in church, oh, baby, they kissing each other.
That's right.
And
how you doing?
They are all at the same meeting, planning the same issue, and we have to be able to do that.
That's a good lesson, man. That's a good lesson. People also don't realize that there's some reciprocity to what you're suggesting. Because let's go back to before Madison, before One City was called One City, when it was Madison Urban Prep.
That's
Am I getting that name
Madison
right?
Prep.
Madison Prep.
Yeah.
And you were appearing before the school board. I knew that I needed to be there. I knew that there had to be black folks that were there. And Vivek was the first person to speak.
That's right.
Viv, who worked with you, was a high schooler at West.
That's right.
He was the first
co-founder of One City. That's right.
He ended up working for you. And I ended up being on the board of One City and board chair and hosting you all, starting the school here. But I think when people see folks standing with each other, they think it's one way. So I remember after the initial Justified Anger town hall meeting, you said to me, hey, some white influencer said, man, what are you doing standing behind Alex on the stage? Because everybody knows that you're the man. Because of what you just said, because we got to stand before each other. But what he didn't understand was I came to that school board meeting in order to be supportive.
That's right.
And I recruited you to UW when you were a high school student. Like, we have decades of supporting each other. Like, they don't realize that our families go back.
That's right.
Since the early 70s. And so we also can't let other people broker Black relationships.
That's right.
Because we understand that, I stand in support this time, then you stand in support that time, and then we stand in solidarity this time. Because we got to do that, because I don't think people knew how close I was to not doing that town hall meeting with 700 people, 600 people showed up. This is before the 1,000 person thing. But it was you, Keitra, Laleda, Lisa, Michael. The fact that you all were there, actually I felt more vulnerable in that space. Because I didn't expect that. I expected 200 people, not 600 people. I expected we had to put up 160 extra chairs in the foyer. And I just wanted to talk about why I wrote it. But those are things that I remember that's not necessarily in the articles, because people often will ask us, how do we get along? What do you think about this Black leader?
That's right.
I learned just to say, so what do you think about him? So that, because they're not going to have me say something that they want to say. So if you got something you want to say, you say it. But you're not about to goad me into saying something.
And well, the thing that people have done, not just here but elsewhere, because I've lived on different places, is they'll make our efforts a popularity contest, and it's dangerous for us. So, for example, when I was at the Urban League, when you're in that job, you're leading Black people, like you're leading a Black organization to open doors for Black people.
Right.
That's the job, and people get used to that. And they're used to seeing you out front. The problem is that if we don't also step back, we don't make room for others.
Exactly.
And so when I went to do One City, it's like, okay, I got to prove ground that we can get this done, and I got to focus, and I got to work through the hard things that happen. But now is the opportunity for others to step up and then carry it forward. And you make more room for people, and all of a sudden now you see more leaders filter through, and that's what really becomes a movement. And so there'll be times where we have to take a step back to allow others to emerge. So think about it when you were out there doing the work and you were going to California and New York.
Right.
If you were on stage for 30 years, because there was that moment when you were younger where everybody was coming to you, there wouldn't have been any room for people like me and others to emerge.
Wow.
Because they get so used to being behind that one Black monolithic leader. And
that's dangerous for the people and the leader. It's dangerous
for the people. So those of us, like, you're building your project, you've got to be out front. You've got to get the resources to do this work. Then when it's done, you're going to have people who are working here, Anik and Dana Pillman, all these people, now they're going to be the ones that emerge, and the movement just grows, the number of people grow.
Right.
And then it becomes a community-driven effort, and you start to see now we're not just having to ask people to help us build build things charitably. We got more Brandon Rules down the street that are making money and also contributing those dollars to the community, like a Pleasant Rolling.
Right.
So we have to make room for other leaders, and we can't let this community not only pit us against each other, but pick one or two of us at the moment, and those are the only ones that they'll ever get behind.
Yes. Are you surprised that Cap Times has continued, for the most part, to focus on some of these issues that have plagued our community?
I am.
Because a lot of people have said, yeah, they're doing this now, but they're not going to keep doing it. It's been 10 years.
They've been consistent. I'm going to tell you.
I agree.
I'm proud of my city. We got a lot more to do.
Yes.
But, man, I never thought. Even when I came back here, I'm like, okay, I'm going to try this. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to read Mark chapter 6 and see what happens, because all of those people who did stuff before, the Southside Raiders were created, the neighborhood center. Like, we had those moments where we were making progress,
we
and
did.
then we fall back. So I'm like, Lord, we're gonna be able to sustain this work. It took other people outside of our community to get behind us and stay with us. In order to do that. And then, so it took us to stick around and stay involved. It took other people to stay around, stay involved. And so to see more leaders and spaces doing things and being involved in public politics. I mean, the city council, the county, right here, 2 or 3 black folks are running for county executive. We might have had one before, maybe,
right.
at
Sheriff
a time.
and
we got the
police
sheriff,
chief.
we got a police chief. I mean, so it shows that we are now becoming deeply embedded and rooted in this community.
Exactly.
And trying to make it better. And all of this work that's been done has gotten us to this point. So I can literally see it going, in the Cap Times continuing to shine a light on those things, continuing to shine a light on one city.
Right.
Henry Sanders and Madison 365.
Right.
Huge transformation for us, because they keep our voices out there. And where Madison Times and others were newspapers, when newspapers were the thing, they took that online.
Yes, they did.
And now it reaches everywhere. You've got your podcast. Henry has his podcast. You've got Vanessa McDowell over there doing housing. And,
right.
We've got all this stuff going on, man. Sarah Alvarado and Tiffany Malone doing a home ownership program. That's their idea. They just brought it to one city. And now we got 11 or 12 families and staff with homes. Who wouldn't have had homes? I mean, this stuff is huge, man. And so them keeping it out there has kept it in the front of people's consciousness, to the point now where, look at our mayors. The last 3 mayors had to run on an equity agenda. An equity agenda.
You're right. So our community forced that.
Had to run on an equity agenda. And the biggest the conversation going on right now in our community with higher ed and all of that they're deciding DEI. How important is it?
Right. Do you want an engineering building, or do you want DEI?
$360 million.
They put a number to it.
They're like, we're okay. We're going to withhold all this money. So there's a battle over hundreds of millions of dollars to determine, based on, are we going to fall back on equity? Brother, let me tell you, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they would have chosen that money over us.
Yes, they would have. In a heartbeat.
Wow. So think about where we are now. We are important. We are in important positions, and we have raised a level of importance among others who now find us as important as we find ourselves.
Dag.
And they're willing to go to the watershed. They're willing to go to the woodshed for us.
Freaking A.
That's huge. There's only one black person on the Board of Regents, I believe.
Right.
So 9 out of 8 said, nope.
Wow, Kaleem, you bringing up a very powerful point. We forced an agenda item that was never on the table.
Correct.
Which is, and now they can't ignore that pink elephant, black elephant, whatever you want to call it. They can't ignore it in the room. It is such an issue that it has forced UW to vote down $300+ million because they don't want to feel suckered or forced into letting go its commitment.
That's right.
To DEI issues.
And think about if you look at just our projects right now, you just look at me, you,
I was going to ask you
projects.
that. How much?
$100 million. We've raised $44 million from this community in 10 years.
So you consider yours, ours,
we've only gotten $1.5 million outside of this community in private funding, intentionally.
Wow.
Because people would have said, C's got the right wing money and he's doing all of this, he's bringing all this. We have other revenue that comes in to charter school payments, all that stuff. But that came from here, brother. So when you add it all up, it's over $100 million.
I mean, let's just let that sit right here in the room for a minute. $100 million.
Just for those 3. Now, not mentioning all the other things. Lisa's got Foundation for Black, Caire Menendez-Collar. So people should feel proud. Now, that's a drop in the bucket of what we need, because when you got people who are way far behind, it takes a lot to get them to start catching up. So people can't start cutting up and say, see, I wrote that check, I'm done. But I look at Pleasant Rowland, man, of that $44 million, brother, she's giving us 24 of it.
Wow.
So, and Jerry's giving us 1. So it's like there's no way we can say that this community, what I was told when I started One City, they're not going to support you here, Kaleem.
Right. That's what they're talking about the center.
Yeah, they're not going to get behind you. And I'm like, no, this is a giving community. And I know my people. I know relationships.
That's exactly what you
said. I was
said.
in D.C. and I saw people giving resources, but we got to be on point. Our stuff's got to be tight. We can't write stuff on a soup can napkin and expect to get, Cadillac type resources to do something. You got to be ready. You got to do the hard work. And if you do that, you're going to be rewarded with the resources, especially with the community behind you. So look at this.
Wow.
So Madison should be proud. People should see we can keep, but we got to keep moving. Let's move from worst place for black people in the United States to the best place.
We're on our way, man.
We're on our way.
We're on our way.
And it's not just us. We're bringing the community, and these people are coming with us.
And the entire community is going to benefit from this. When you think about things that Zach Brandon has said, he's the head of our local Chamber of Commerce, how Madison is outpacing growths of like Orlando, San Francisco, Austin. Like it's one of the fastest growing communities in the world. And in the country, it's becoming very attractive to tech kinds of companies. Mm-hmm. And so we're helping Madison become attractive.
Because we're increasing our visibility of diversity.
Exactly,
we're not just the ones people got to give stuff to, feed the African, like the kids, they always show the worst kids, like in the worst
bloated
situations.
bellies and things like
all
that.
All of that, no.
But that's not what we're doing.
Nope.
Mr. Caire, as we this time is going by so quickly, as we begin to wind down, remind me, how long is your family, how long has your blood been in the Madison area?
1907, over 100 years.
So over 100, that's almost 120 years.
Yeah.
Wow, and that was your great-great-grandparents?
My great-great-grandmother
was Mr. and Mrs. Pierce?
Yeah, but it was Sam Pierce was Hetty Pierce's son, Hetty and John Pierce's son. But Hetty Pierce is my great-great-grandmother. He brought the family here because he was a porter on the Northwest Railway train. And he ended up getting into train in his later years that went from Chicago to Milwaukee to Madison to Minneapolis. And he liked Madison because it was a good midway point, and he staffed the dignitary cars. So Bob LaFollette, all those people would ride his car. And then one of the Millers was the first black person to hold his job as executive secretary. It was like the secretary outside the governor's office. And when that person retired from it, he became the next person to serve in that role. And he became the most popular one. He used it for political reasons. And so he was the first one to try to get an urban league here. And that was in the 30s. And he was, his picture hung in the urban league, and people didn't know why it was hanging there at the old one on Gorham Street. So I had to enlighten him. He was the first one to try to get one here. His mother, Hetty Pierce, my great-great-grandma, was the oldest person ever died in Wisconsin. She was 115 years old. She was born in slavery in 1829 in North Carolina, died here in 1944, outlived all of her children, her husband, everybody. Wow. And they were involved with St. Paul Church. St. Paul Church.
That's Madison's oldest black
Reverend
church.
Newell was the one who went down to Arkansas to bring my grandmother's mama and doll them up here from Arkansas after her father passed away. The church, would always look out for the parents, and she could work here. And my Uncle Art, who was the wrestler, Sailor Art Thomas, that was my grandmother's brother.
I remember seeing him like at Renaissance.
6'5" and nothing but muscles.
Thomas,
and he's in the World Wrestling Hall of Fame too. He was the first wrestler. He was the first bodybuilder wrestler in the United States. He was huge, and worked out at Forest Gym. That's still over there on the east side. Worked at Oscar Mayer. So our family goes back, man. So we know so much about this city, but we know the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what I'm starting to see emerge is more good.
What would Mr. and Mrs. Pierce say to the black leadership that's raised over $100 million to make this community better, building on legacy of what they had hoped to see? I'm sure they didn't think it would.
Man, they would be proud of us. I mean, he was trying to get the neighborhood houses iteration on the Mill Street.
Sure,
was his idea. It was built later, yeah. He was trying to get a house for African-American students that would serve the campus students who would come here for the campus, and he was recruiting students here. He had Du Bois and all these other people with the Miller family coming to Madison, was staying at the Madison Club, and there was a whole lot of history I could tell you, but they would be proud, man. They would be proud. They would be, so happy for us, but they would also say, you're just getting started. You got to keep going. They were activists for life.
Right. You can't rest on your laurels just because you built a $30 million building.
Activists on the plantation, activists after the plantation. They were activists for life. Hetty Pierce's husband, John Pierce, if people ever go to Jefferson Parish and look on this wall there, it used to be divided in the left bank and the right bank. And the left bank was where black folks lived. And now people go there and they're like, black folks were here. Even folks in New Orleans are like, because that's mostly white.
Right.
He was the county executive. He was the leader of the county. He was in the state legislature.
Now, part of this history's got to go in our Center for Black Excellence and
That's
Culture.
right.
When we talk about the rich history of Black first.
That's right. They were all about Reconstruction. He was appointed by Governor Pinchback when Pinchback was the first black governor who was appointed because the other governor died in office, and he brought him into the legislature.
Wow.
Isn't that something?
So that's amazing. And so they were activists for life. And so
for life. My grandmother, activist for life.
Yeah. So as much as we get credit for being innovative, you and I and others are really building on the shoulders.
That's right.
Of black think.
Miss Malele, Miss Dr. Virginia Hedda, these were activists for life. They were activists until they died.
Yes. Wow.
There was no retirement for them.
And that's the attitude we got to take on.
Look at Dr. Latson Billing. People don't realize that she looks so good at 78 years old, 77, somewhere in there. Chris Hodge, she's in her 80s.
I bumped into her yesterday.
She just finished working with us.
80s?
She's 81, 82.
Wow.
Looking good.
Excellent.
Activist for life.
So you and I need to take care of ourselves.
That's right.
So we can continue doing this work, man. Listen, you all, my very special guest has been Mr. Kaleem Caire. As you can tell, he just has a wealth of knowledge, a bedrock of leadership and just for bringing our community together to think differently, to think higher. You know what? Let me just take just another minute just to ask this question, or just to make this statement. We created what's called our Madison plan. Mm-hmm. We're going to put a link to it in this. And when the anniversary of that comes around, because that's going to be 2016, so we got a little bit more time, 2015 maybe. We have some time for that. But you actually ran point on that for me to figure out in these 4 program areas, what do we want this work to do? Mm-hmm. But some of what we heard back from the Black community, even it happened. Now, again, Justified Anger didn't make it happen, but people articulated what's needed. For example, there needed to be a program that would allow people to have an associate's degree by the time they finish high school. Mm-hmm. You fast forward, you got the STEM program through Madison College. It exists.
MSD, it exists.
But Black people said back then, this is what we need to see in order for us to move ahead. So I want to, when it comes around to either the anniversary of that or the early part of the new year, when we talk about some of the work of Justified Anger, when we do talk about the Our Madison plan, I would really like to get your voice or even a lecture from you on that, on what how you thought about that whole guiding process, because I think that's probably the most comprehensive snapshot of Black thought in Madison's history, taken by the Black people, of the Black people. And but so much of those things that came up in that report, that those teams that you gathered came up with, and we pushed them to think brilliantly.
That's right.
Don't just say, well, we just need teachers to have more training. Like, no, what do we really need?
That's right.
And so we need to pause, because this 10-year anniversary is not just because I penned something, but it's because the community paused and we leaned into each other. We worked together collaboratively across many spectrum, and we created something that shook Madison.
That's right.
And so I love having people who are part of that in this studio with me, because that was our collective history. We helped that to happen together. So I just want you to know I really appreciate your support then, your support now, your support in the future, because by working together over the decades is how we continue to bring change.
And I hope, I'm saying this real quick, I hope the next thing that we can do to build off of this is get the local schools in Dane County, the districts, all 16 of them, to require a civics course. That
I'm with you on that.
Not only deals just with our issues, but other communities and just general like voting, and like there should be a requirement in our communities for civics course. So even if the state legislature, which I think would be open to it, if they wouldn't support it, mandate it for schools, lets us do it locally. And then make a part of that every year. There's going to be a tour of the cultural center. Yes. There's going to be a tour of the hub. There's going to be a tour of the Bayview community and the Asian community down there. There's going to be a tour of some of the more prominent places in Madison that were shaped by early white folks in the city. But focus on how did they do these things to make the city better for everyone. So our kids understand their responsibility to keep it going.
That's beautiful. Well, you all, again, this has been my special guest, Mr. Kaleem Caire. Listen, you all, you know people who would be inspired by this message. So, take a moment. Although I appreciate that you sort of go into your personal space with your headphones in and you listen to this podcast, but I'm going to need you to do a couple things. I'm going to need you to subscribe so that you get notices when new episodes drop. I'm going to need you to write a review about what this has meant to you. Repost it on social media. Forward it to some people you know. Help me get the word out. This is not a secret that I want you to keep. This is a great nugget of truth and insight and Black thought and Black honesty that I want you to share. And so lean in and learn and be transformed by what you're hearing today, but make a commitment to become a part of the change that you really want to see. So lean in, listen, learn, subscribe, click on that Patreon link and become a supporter of us to help us to grow the reach of this and to continue to enhance the production quality of this, but become a part of the change that we want to see. And to each of you, because you are listeners and you make this worthwhile and you make this podcast great, I appreciate you. Have a great day, and thank you for being the best part of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G.
Black Like Me. Black like me.
I want to thank you for taking time to listen to this episode of Black Like Me podcast with Dr. Alex G. When I first imagined doing this podcast, I thought about myself with my iPhone sitting in a room in my house, just sort of doing this all on my own. But you know what? The reason why we've won awards and the reason why we have over 200 episodes up is because I have a brilliant team who helps me to make this podcast what it is. So let me take a moment and thank Jeremy and Eli, who are my editors and producers extraordinaire. Jakisha, who handles marketing. If you like that opening track of our theme song, you can show your appreciation to Corey Saffold, who created that and produced it, and Marcus Fleming, my cousin, who's on vocals. I also want to say that this podcast was started with the generous support of the Human Family Unity Foundation, and so we always want to stop and thank them for that. For the many patrons who support us through our Patreon page, thank you, thank you, thank you. You don't just listen, but you support, you lean in, and you help this podcast to be what it is. And then I need to thank you, the listeners, who make a point of downloading this, listening to it, and sharing it. Without all of you, this podcast would not be what it is and what it's becoming. Thank you so much.
Black like me.